Thank you for joining Skystone Partners today for our second 2023 installment of On Giving, incisive commentary and analysis at the intersection of philanthropy and the greater good. I'm Liz Knuppel, President and CEO of Skystone Partners, where we believe philanthropy is a powerful force for good. I'm proud to welcome you attendees and our guests, Drs. Conley and Genevieve Shaker, co-authors of Fundraising Principles for Faculty and Academic Leaders. Welcome. And our guests here today are experts in philanthropy, most specifically on philanthropy in higher education. And even more importantly for our audience here today is that both of them are practitioners, professors, and researchers. I say practitioners just like most of you who have joined us here in the audience today. They understand the continuum of practice to research and then back to practice again. They know how to make it work in the field. Hi, Aaron and Jen.
Greetings.
Glad to see you. Before we get started with our conversation, let me tell our attendees a little bit more about each one of our guests here today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to welcome you to the Skystone Partners On Giving webcast, where we're privileged to introduce our two esteemed experts in the field of fundraising and higher education, each bringing their unique perspectives and contributions. First, allow us to introduce Dr. Genevieve G. Shaker, Associate Professor of Philanthropic Studies and the holder of the Donald A. Campbell Chair in Fundraising Leadership at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. Dr. Shaker's extensive academic background and practical experience as an advancement officer have forged her into a remarkable expert in the field. Her research delves into fundraising, philanthropy education, and higher education and advancement with a specific focus on the role of faculty work in promoting the public good. Notably, Dr. Shaker has co-authored Fundraising Principles for Faculty and Academic Leaders, a pivotal contribution to fundraising literature in higher education. She is also the editor. Here we have only the third edition of Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, one of the seminal books in fundraising education. She is currently the editor of the 5th edition, and I think Jean Temple, who is the editor of the 3rd edition, is joining us here today as well. In any case, Genevieve's dedication extends to innovative teaching methods and mentoring students, earning her recognition as the Emerging Scholar of the Year by the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And now we also have the privilege to introduce Dr. Conley, a seasoned fundraising practitioner, educator, and award-winning author. In 2003, Dr. Conley, alongside Dr. Shaker, received the AFP Skystone Partners Prize for Research in Fundraising and Philanthropy for this very same groundbreaking work, Fundraising Principles for Faculty and Academic Leaders. Dr. Conley holds an EDD in Higher Education and Philanthropic Studies from Indiana University and has been a dedicated faculty member at the fundraising schools at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy since 2014. He brings a wealth of knowledge from his roles as a fundraising leader at institutions such as University of Colorado, the University of Texas at Dallas, University of Pittsburgh, Florida State University, and Purdue University. Both Genevieve and Aaron have made significant contributions to the advancement of fundraising and higher education. Their expertise and commitment make them invaluable resources for our discussion today. Please join us and extend a warm welcome to Dr. Shaker and Dr. Conley as they share their insights on this critical topic. Thank you all for joining us here today.
Thanks,
so before we begin our conversation, attendees out there in attendee land, I want to touch on a couple of housekeeping items. First, about format. We'll be interviewing Aaron and Genevieve about their experiences and their book, and then we'll have some discussion. Then we'll have a few minutes for select questions from you in a Q&A session before we wrap up our conversation. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature that's located at the bottom of your screen. And the chat feature that you all use to say hello in at the top of the hour has been turned off. Our question moderator, Skystone Partners colleague Bill Mulvihill, will receive your questions, and he'll be curating them so Genevieve and Aaron have the opportunity to answer as many as we can without duplications. Bill's behind the scenes right now and will join us for the Q&A section. So now down to business. Let's start with a pretty straightforward question today. Can you share with our audience the impetus behind your book? What did you see in the field that caused you to think a body of work like this will really elevate our practice and our profession? Aaron, I think you were saying you might.
I'll take an initial shot at it and certainly welcome my co-author. But, initially, like all of us who spent a long time in this field, part of it was born from frustration. At some point you say, oh, I should write a book about this because this has happened and that's happened. And there's, this doesn't have to happen. So part of it was that, but more seriously, the real motivator for me and the spark was there was a terrific series of articles that were written in the Chronicle of Higher Education under a series named Don't Fear Fundraising. And it was written by a dean. And I think it was between 2013, 2016. And so once every 2-3 months, another one would come out. And I was still in a fundraising role with universities at that time. And every time I read them, I agreed with everything he was saying. It's like, yes, we should, but it was a dean who was saying it. And it's like, this is what we try and tell deans and department chairs and faculty members. And so just by chance, I was living in Dallas, and I still live in Dallas, but this dean was at Texas Tech University. And so I just reached out to him and I said, I live in Dallas. If you ever pass through, would love to just chat. And one thing led to another. And David Perlmutter, who's the dean at Texas Tech, he was able to get the entire series permission to be reprinted in this book. And so once we had that, I approached Jen because I wanted to write a book, but I really wanted to have a co-author, somebody who really had much more depth when it came to the research that's going on. So I reached out to her and I said, look, we've got this dean and we've got this series that we could publish in its entirety, and the rest is history. Jen came on and it was a joy to write.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it was born a little bit out of frustration, but a little bit out of the realization that there were, in fact, deans out there
who get it. Yes.
Who get it. Genevieve, I'm afraid I cut you off from it. You looked like you were about to add to that.
Oh, I was just going to add that, we just saw an opportunity to build the resources that are available to people in academia who don't have that fundraising training, but who have an opportunity to raise money for amazing things that are happening on campuses. And so we saw the need, and among those that we had worked with in our professional lives, and to just create a new resource, a new tool for them, and that would be something that would be great for development officers too. And so really there could be a twofold purpose in this project.
Right. So it would really, so the intended audience really is the fundraising officer as well as the academic leader. And I guess sort of pulling all of this together, Aaron saw a need and Genevieve saw, an opportunity for training and pulling the fundraising professionals together. But I guess this whole need thing, the reason you were so pleased and astonished by that series of articles in the Chronicle of Higher Education is that many academic leaders and faculty may not have seen fundraising as part of their role or felt it's uncomfortable for them. And so, when we were preparing for this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and then, the past couple of days, it made me think of the Pablo Picasso quote, "The meaning of life is to find one's gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." And so how might this be really relatable to deans, to our academic partners in higher education, at what is really at the core of their being?
One of my other research interests has been to explore how universities and their faculty serve the public good. Mm-hmm. And so I had my first book really addressed this question about how faculty work, when and if and how could faculty work be conceived of as having ties to philanthropy. And at the core of that, I felt was this root interest and care that people who choose faculty work have for the greater good.
Mhm.
and that their work goes beyond the classroom or the lab or the research project, and is really all about how does this work serve the community? How does this work serve society? And so there is this tie, I think, in through my research and through personal experience and people I have known and talked to and admired, that ties us all to philanthropy, right? And so that quote is so apt because, you know, we are not in this work just to earn a dollar. We are in this work because it has meaning as fundraisers and as academics.
Mhm.
And so that's the glue that holds us together. And out of that is the outcome of philanthropy, right?
Right.
We raise money not for its own sake, but for the good it does, the opportunity it provides, the problems it solves. And so faculty and their work, we're close cousins in that. We share that. And so we just, you know, building upon that are the tools that we want to provide to faculty who haven't had the training that fundraisers have had. And by the way, fundraisers may also enter academia without training in fundraising for higher ed. So that's the space where the book has sort of a twofold purpose, right? It can be very useful for a new fundraiser as well, coming into this space and thinking about, you know, what is the landscape that I'm working in here now? And so it is for many academics and academics who can become leaders, academics who have exciting ideas for things they want to do for the world or for their students. Fundraising and building external support is more and more a part of that role and that expectation. But that doesn't mean that we prepare people for that when you go through a PhD or your other academic training. And so we're trying to just step into that void and help in that space with that foundation of philanthropy.
Right. And so, you know, when a person, if I understand you correctly, is when a person goes into higher education, they didn't go into industry, they didn't go into government work, they didn't go into nonprofit work, they went into higher education to, you know, one of the things we say at Skystone Partners a lot is elevate the quality of life and standard of living, whether that is teaching education or teaching music or teaching one of the sciences so that it can advance research and healthcare, or teaching doctors or nurses or, you know, writers so that we can communicate better. And so it really is what I think I hear you saying is faculty already comes to it with this attitude of giving, having identified, this is my unique true gift. This is what I love to do. This is the value that I can bring to the planet by elevating others and teaching others. And so it is that spirit of sharing that is this sort of common foundation that maybe isn't, it's a connection to make, because maybe it's not universally recognized. Is that kind of what you're saying as it relates to this exploration that you had, the connection between, you know, education, higher education, and philanthropy and serving the greater good?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you have the resources, if you have the financial resources, well, then sky's the limit as far as the good you can do. Yes.
Right.
That's right. You can just do more, right?
You can just do more. Exactly. You can educate more people, do more research, write more interesting articles, inform more people, whatever the unique way of helping our global world become more unified and really a better place to live. So what do you hope? I mean, I know this is a resource for faculty, for staff, you know, fundraising staff. What are are there other results that you would hope to see from this specific work? Yeah, what are they?
One thing that we emphasize in the book is the need for the development team, the advancement team, to be at the table when plans are being made in academic units, in the university. So when you're making your strategic plan, something really critical we talk about in a chapter in the book, and we include a case study on this as well, is that you need to have advancement at the table with you. You need to be when you're making a plan that's contingent on raising money, do you need the people who raise the money at the table with you, right? And so I say that to say that in writing this book, we have the goal of elevating understandings of the work, the depth and the nuance and the expertise of the work that is raising money for the university. It's very complex, and it takes a lot of expertise and knowledge, finesse. And so you want those people at the table. But if you're the academic leader, you don't understand that work, you haven't grown up in that, it's new to you, it's not necessarily going to be your first instinct to bring that part of your team into those conversations. And so we want to elevate the work, the important work that advancement does, and bring that to the attention and the understanding of those who are in those roles making those key decisions. And so if we can help do that, that would really be a positive goal for us. We need people, academics willing to be next generation leaders in the university, and they need to have fundraising in their toolkits. We need people. We want to elevate people who want to do this work. We want to elevate people from diverse backgrounds who want to do this work. And we need leadership work. And to be in those roles now, more and more, you're going to be asked about fundraising,
right,
and external support. And so we want this book to be a tool for great potential leaders, so that this isn't a stumbling block for them that impedes their ability to move into these roles. And so if we can help in that space, that's also a really great outcome. And then Aaron may have some other thoughts, and everyone can see I'm fighting with the sunlight in my office. So I am going to move around a little bit and try to reset myself.
The good news is it's sunny there. It's sunny there.
It's very sunny.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing to my computer camera.
So while you do a little shifting, Aaron, did you want to talk a little bit about, what you're hoping this book can, these thoughts can be to the ecosystem of philanthropy in education?
Sure. Related to what Jen was saying, and I completely agree with what she said, but related to that, one thing that I really wanted to see come out of this was for academic leaders to take fundraising seriously. It's a profession now, and I started in this business, nearly 30 years ago. And so back then, people who came into fundraising roles a lot of times didn't have any experience, or, worked in a completely different industry. And so they weren't really taken seriously as resources, people who could really coach and guide and instruct a dean or faculty member who doesn't understand fundraising. So it was just viewed as, well, let's just go ask people for money. It's changed so much. Fundraising is a profession now. It has all the hallmarks of any established profession. And my hope with this book was, by grounding it in the research the way that we did, the faculty would read this book and read it from the perspective of their own profession. We took a very diligent approach and included more references to research than any other book that's been written on this topic. And we hope that sinks in with faculty, that Jen and I, yes, we're sharing insights and recommendations, but wherever possible, we're grounding it in evidence in the same way that they would if they're writing a book on something in their discipline.
Yeah, and I love the way that and I'm going to grab the book real quick, because I love the book. I'm an academic at heart, although, that's not what I do on my day-to-day. And when I first started reading it, I was really, really delighted at the way that it was laid out, because it's clearly designed specifically for that audience. It looks like a textbook. It reads like a textbook. It's instructional. We're not horsing around here. But one of the things that occurs to me is, let's pretend for a minute I'm the president or the vice president or the provost of an institution of higher learning, right? I am running a whole darn organization, side of campus, college, whatever it is that I'm doing. I do not have time to read this book, right? Let's pretend I don't have time to read this book. It's laid out in a way that's familiar. The language is familiar. It's cited it's research-based. And so it will, elevate the credibility of fundraising and the like. But if I am a fundraiser, and I want my president to read this book. That may or may not happen. So what is the headline? And I'll give you headline plus 3 bullets, but what is the headline for why advancement should be at the table when we're planning? What is the headline for why and how fundraising is more complex than let's just go ask people for money? You know, how can we make this case to our, because I recognize, I know a lot of the folks who are in the room here today, they're going to need to take the case to hire leadership to really be at the table when the decisions are being made, to thinking about fundraising in a different way. We're not just going to like get a random list and start blunderbussing, you know, like with our blunderbusses. What do we say to our bosses to make this real?
I'll take a first stab at this. I'm curious to see what Jen would say, but my first reaction to that would be, show your president and your provost how much your peers are raising. And if your peers are raising a whole lot more than you are, then maybe we should look at what's in the book and see what we could apply to ours. Because that's the thing, places that are high performing fundraising organizations are following a lot of the recommendations and strategies that we've laid out in the book. So you don't really need to recreate the wheel. Look at what your peers have done and then figure out where your weaknesses are, and then work through how to address those weaknesses. And that's a lot of the content in the book is intended to address a lot of that. You know, the audience for this book in terms of institutions, you know, it's probably not the Ivy Leagues and Stanfords of the world. It's those institutions that are a lot of publics and large regional publics that within the last 20 years have just really started to get serious about fundraising. And this can help them tremendously. Schools that get serious about fundraising can go from incremental, maybe 3 to 5% increases in their fundraising to 10 to 20 or even more in a very short period of time. And I've lived through that in my professional life, and I know colleagues who have done it too. And it's by doing the things that we put in there.
Right, right. Jen, did you have some additional thoughts on that as well?
That was a great answer, Erin, and so appropriate. You know, you can bring this data and evidence from peers, and that's available to benchmark through case and other sources. You know, so that information is out there both qualitatively and then quantitatively as well. And so I think that's a key thing. And so that very strategic big picture approach is a big thing. I also will just add, really at a kind of a human level, so many of the deans and presidents and faculty that I have talked to and have worked with have talked about, yes, that fear of fundraising, so apt on David Perlmutter's columns. But then they have also talked about how building this support, knowing these donors, and making this contribution has been one of their favorite things in their careers. And so this brings joy, it brings opportunity, it brings relationships with people who care about the same things that you do personally and professionally. And so it can be a wonderful respite in the difficult work of leadership in the university in the modern era. And so I've just heard that from, and Erin I know has too. And so I think there's that kind of value, that's kind of a human value to this work that people don't know. Just as they don't know the structures and the potential, they also don't know that the relational beauty of all of this as well.
Right. And that's something is sometimes not so easy to you can explain it, but it's not necessarily so easy for folks to understand it until they experience it. One of the things that I know we like to see is, what's the most successful solicitation? And it's when you don't ask at all, but the donor says, how can I help? Yes. Right. And those are so often those very conversations that if you've done the work and you've positioned your leaders correctly as an advancement professional, those are the conversations they get to have. when somebody says, how can I help? Right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So why does the way that we talk to people, and this is kind of a segue from the human aspect of things that Jen mentioned, but why does the way we talk to people about philanthropy and our use of language have such great importance? And I think, Aaron, that was something that you and I had talked about a little bit. Do you want to jump in there first?
Yeah, this is kind of where, fundraising has always had always been talked about as an art, and our book is about exploring the science that can help us improve the art of fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
But the way we talk to people, there's always going to be an art aspect to that. And we specifically wanted to include an entire chapter. It's not one, this is probably one of the shorter chapters, but a chapter on the language of fundraising. And this was, again, partially born out of frustration. I have a list of banned words and phrases that I've used for years to explain to faculty and deans. There's just language we should not use. So things like aggressive, hit up, money left on the table, low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
These
Thank you. That's my least favorite one. Thank you. Kiss, kiss.
This sort of language, we hear it, it's pretty common, and sadly, a lot of fundraisers still use it too. And I always correct people politely, but when we use language like that, it really oversimplifies what is a complex process. Mm-hmm. Every single person is different, so it doesn't matter if we're aggressive with one person, and we think we should be aggressive with everybody. It's not the same. And so when we use language like that, it oversimplifies the process. And when we don't get the gift, that language tends to find its way out again. And one example is early in my career, I secured, it wasn't a big gift, but it was like $50,000 from a donor who had never given at that level before. And I was so proud. I was early in my career. And I came back and I said, I got, landed at $50,000. And one of the faculty in the school said, man, you left money on the table. That guy's worth so much more. And it was just this, again, a very simplistic look at what had been a process and that takes months, if not years. And it's not just about, on the major gift side, it's not just about showing up and asking. So that's, from my perspective, that's why language is so important with academic leaders, is making sure that we're just not oversimplifying what is a very complex process.
Right. And certainly recognizing that that was a first-time gift from that donor.
Right. Yeah. We should be celebrating it and not lamenting how much we could or should have gotten. Right.
Exactly. Because what's the easiest and cheapest donor to get?
That's the one who's already given. Yes.
So very practical. So even if your academic leaders do want to boil it down to left money on the table, you actually didn't, because now the door is open. And so we're not saying the word though.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that is a really respectful and honoring way to look at, what is a noble profession? Because we're out here, we meaning fundraisers and our board members and everybody else who contributes, we're team, it's a team sport, but we're out there looking to make sure that our institutions and therefore their missions have the financial resources that they need to achieve the thing. Genevieve said it earlier. We're not just raising money to raise money. We're raising money to actually do something with it, to change behavior, thought, action, knowledge, attitude, whatever it is. So all of that in mind, we've been talking a lot about higher education, but why might this volume be important to other fundraising professionals? Because higher education is very specialized. It's very niche. There's a lot of it. They raise big dollars, but how and why might this be something valuable to the rest of our sector?
Jen, you want to take a shot? I've got an idea, but feel free to go first.
I'll start the ball rolling.
Yes.
I think some of the concepts that we are talking about are universal in our nonprofit organizations. So building understanding around fundraising, challenge that is not unique to academia, right? Like, I think this is some of the ideas around a culture of philanthropy. How do you build understanding in others? This book is a model for that. Also thinking about the importance of being at the table, the strategic planning, the organizational planning, and being at the table around setting of fundraising expectations is really critical in all kinds of organizations. There's some concepts in the book that are really guidelines to help faculty and academic leaders think about time management, what is the best use of their time in fundraising? And I think those ideas and tools would hold true for other leaders in other kinds of organizations who would be similarly challenged in their umbrella of responsibilities to make choices around what is it I need to do with the fundraising, and what is it the team, needs to do without me and can well do without me. And so those are some thoughts that I had. And then Aaron, I'd be interested in your thoughts as well.
Just one thing that I think is really going to be helpful to others across the nonprofit sector is that we all obsess over making the ask. And Liz, you mentioned it earlier, the best gift is the one where essentially there's no solicitation. The donor understands that there's an opportunity there and it's something they're interested in. So what Jen and I did, which I hope is looked at as a real contribution to the field, the whole field of fundraising, not just higher education, is we modified the major gift cycle, which we see. You could do a Google search on major gift cycle and all the illustrations will look almost the same. So we identify, we qualify, do they have capacity? Are they interested? Then we cultivate, then we solicit, then we steward. What we did was we inserted a step in between cultivation and solicitation and really try to get to a point of what we call donor readiness. So donor readiness occurs when you know what your donor is actually interested in, what they care about, what their values are, because the research tells us that's what drives major gifts at least from high net worth individuals. So knowing what they care about, you need to know this. And then two conditions need to be met. One is when we identify a need that we're going to ask them for, it matches what we know about what they care about. So this is a need that we're going to approach them for that we know they care about. So that's number one. And the second condition that needs to happen is you need to have a high degree of confidence that the time is right for the donor to make a major gift. The time's always right for us to ask, right? Let's go ask. But stop and think, and this only comes from cultivation, knowing where people are at that stage in their life. If they run a business, is business going well? If they've got kids, are their kids going off to college? Trying to do those two things. If you do those really well, you will have so much more success major gift fundraising because you've reached donor readiness, and it's not just a shot in the dark where you're just hoping that this is something that they'll go for and the timing is right.
Yeah. And I think that's something really important that you call out right there, because I think it's for those of us who've been doing it for a long time, we intuit the donor's ready, the donor's not ready. But then our leaders say to us, well, why not?
Yeah.
You've been cultivating them for 13 months or whatever it is. But I think that in naming it, and this goes back to the whole concept of language, in naming in this sort of donor cycle, donor readiness is what happens before the solicitation. It's something we intuit, and by putting it there, you are quantifying a next step, which makes it easier for folks who need to be involved in fundraising and measure our production and success to actually see where cultivation is going, where it needs to get before we're going to make the request. And it gives us some points, sort of almost a quantifiable checklist of how do I know the donor is ready?
Yes. Yep.
Very nice. So that's huge across the entire spectrum of the nonprofit sector, not just in higher education. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I have one final question. I did have one final question, but I have a penultimate final question or comment. One of the things we talked about a little bit is fear. And the start of the book was Don't Fear Fundraising, David Perlmutter's series of articles. And you all said, when I said, what's the headline for talking to your president or talking to your vice president or whatever it is? And I put a little star next to it. The first thing you said, Aaron, was show how much your peers are raising. And that is the moment that if we are underperforming, that in the pit of one's stomach, you're just like, I don't want my boss to know. I just don't want my boss to know.
I know.
And so would it be a fair way to move forward with looking at that yourself? To go to your president and come with problem solution rather than just look how much they're raising?
Yes.
So we are the same size, similar alumni, similar success rates, similar rankings, similar, when when US News and World Report does the college rankings, we fall in the same bucket all the time, but they're raising a whole heck of a lot more. We can do this, and this is how, if we follow these steps as is that the way? I just want to.
Yes, yeah, and it plays well to presidents and provosts, because a lot of the operations of a university approach it in the same sort of way. So admissions, retention, graduation rates, they have a peer group. Every institution has a peer group and maybe an aspirational group, and they're looking at these kind of metrics. And like Jen said before, a lot of this information as it relates to fundraising is out there, at least to do a very high level benchmark to understand, are we underperforming? Are we in the middle? And use that data, because that's the same way that a vice president for student affairs is going to approach the president before asking for more admissions officers or a bigger marketing budget. You've got to ground your argument in evidence. Right.
And so that sort of ties into what is the ultimate question. And I'm going to give our audience here a quick little heads up. Please do start putting your questions into the Q&A box as we're asking this last question. But I think that this makes it a really nice full circle. We talked, at the beginning about don't fear fundraising. And then we talked about, oh no, I have to tell my boss we could be doing better because our peers are doing better. Oh, pit of my stomach. And how. That was some really great practical advice there. But so this is sort of the next step of making the case. So how do we build a professionalized, or how will building a professionalized total fundraising team across the university leadership really benefit our institution? So we know maybe we could be doing better by comparison to our peers. We've told our boss. How is it going to benefit our institution and what we're really seeking to do with our mission on the planet?
Well, like anything, it's a long-term proposition. Nothing is going to happen immediately. It's you hear the metaphor a lot. A university is a big ship, and it takes, if you're going to turn it, it's going to take a while before it turns. But putting those actions in place and setting some realistic goals, setting a 12-month goal and an 18, 24-month goal, and then measuring it and adjusting as needed, I think is the most important thing.
Right. Genevieve, would you like to add anything to that?
I think it's a really, when Aaron was talking, I was thinking about stories of success. And we talk about that in the book, actually, at the beginning of the book, and how, storytelling around philanthropy is such a key tool in kind of not raising. It's an external tool to use and share with donors. It's also an internal tool for all of us doing this work, a motivator, an inspirer, a reminder of why we're doing this. And so I was just thinking about, what are the stories of success in philanthropy that then help power the energy toward the future. And so, knowing those stories, being able to reflect on them and think about, how did that gift that we received for scholarships 10 years ago, how has that been transformational? What are the stories of the students who received those and have gone out into the world? And so I think kind of looking ahead in the long term, also looking backward and bringing that forward will help us to be able to articulate the why this matters, who this has helped, what this has achieved, how we have used these philanthropic dollars over time, and how they have strengthened our institution. And so I think that all can really be put together to create something powerful to help energize the development of these total fundraising teams, and the idea also that we're all part of that team. Right. We're all part of that team. And so now, we who receive and benefit from the philanthropic gifts, we're part of that team. And so it's very helpful for us to understand these processes too.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So now we're gonna turn our ship just a teeny little bit to the left or the right, and Bill Mulvihill, who is our question moderator and has grand experience, really a breadth of experience in higher education as well in philanthropy. What is the first thing that's on people's minds today as it relates to Aaron and Genevieve's work in higher education and philanthropy?
Well, so far, they're a little bashful. They haven't submitted any questions, but I have a few I can add. One of which is Aaron, pick up on your idea of writing a book. I had a different title, was "You Can't Make This Up," and then it'd be the story of the philanthropy,
Yeah.
because I still get people now, even though I'm retired, saying you can't write a book about your experiences. I said you're true. One of the things I've always harped on when I was in advancement was everybody in the institution has a role to play. It might not be the same role. Some are askers, some are entertaining people, some are identifying people that they knew from way back when they were a faculty member. How do we get people? How do you think we take the next step and get the faculty to be proactive and I want to be involved in this effort, as opposed to I'm kind of being tugged into this effort?
That's a great question. I'll go back to something in my experience. I requested when I was working at a school level, when we brought in new faculty, and it was a school that we're hiring a lot of new faculty, it was really growing. And I asked the dean, I had been there for 3-4 years, and we were really starting to generate, some momentum and more stronger fundraising results. And I just said, look, we need to sustain this. We need more faculty to understand this. Could I be part of new faculty orientation? Just give me 8 to 10 minutes. That's it. I won't go over, but they need to understand the role of philanthropy in this school. And maybe I'll share an example or two of how faculty have played a role in a gift. And that went over so well that when I went on to be a VP at an institution, same thing, it was growing very fast. I'd been there a couple of years, but I asked the provost, I said, with all these new faculty coming in, would you be willing to let me be part of the new faculty orientation? And without hesitation, both that dean and the provost responded yes, because they understood it. So having leadership like that embraces having more of your faculty understand how it works. And sometimes you need to start with the new faculty, not to be insulting, but some faculty who have been around it forever just may not think there's nothing new for me to learn here.
Right.
So start with the new ones and get them involved. But Jen, since you're a tenured and named chair, what would be your perspective on that?
I would just say that I think there are quite a few faculty who would like to be in this space. And so I think there is more openness and understanding now than in the past. So I think that has grown. And in some trainings that I have done, the faculty department chair, people in department chair roles, for example, are very interested in this space and in thinking about raising money for their particular units. And, it's interesting because some things in academia are easier to raise money for than others. And we have the beauty of gigantic, amazing missions with very diverse, and we will never have enough fundraising staff to be able to do all of the work. And so I think one really important thing is like striking a balance and having some systems and structures and ideas for how faculty can be involved, and when we have a lot of enthusiasm, how do we prepare them to be involved? And how do we kind of coach them to work with us? Because that's another thing that can happen. Sometimes faculty want to be involved. They want to be involved without us. So
yeah,
that's a message in the book too, is, we're on the team together, work with your development staff, so I think there's a lot of nuance. And I think there's a lot of opportunity and there's work to be done on our part to create training, to think about where the opportunities lie, to prepare faculty to do these things. And I think that's happening at more institutions now in the experiences that I've had and things I've heard. And so I think we're at a good place on that.
So we have a question from Josh Hamilton, which is a YP fundraiser in higher ed. I sometimes come across the deans that are, quote, friends with donors and maybe used to their style of fundraising. How can I speak truth to power when working with folks who are used to a certain style process that may not follow best practice?
I'm going to infer a little bit in the question. I think what's being asked is deans who grow to be friends with people.
Right.
How can I possibly ask them for money? Because I've dealt with that, and that sounds like what sort of where the question's going. That's a hard one to get over because they view it as a personal relationship, and ultimately, you're a dean of a university, at a school and university. I mean, this is your professional identity. And you may have a personal relationship, but this is about fulfilling the mission and vision that you have for your school. And so whenever I run into that, I always encourage them to talk to them about inviting them into their vision for, this is what I really believe the school could become in 5 or 10 years, which is probably a conversation they've not had in that way. And I think they can have that conversation in a way where it's not going to hurt their friendship. And if it doesn't lead to a gift conversation, that's fine. But they need to make that attempt.
Jen, any thoughts?
Hi, Josh. And I'll just answer from a little different perspective. And I would say, we all in fundraising have learned that we adapt our approach based on different donors and, different expectations. And so we have to model that. And so, if a dean has these fears or has a particular approach that works really well in some cases, I think we, have an opportunity to talk about, here's other things that I've seen have worked, or here's what I'm seeing with this donor, and here's what I suggest. And so I think we can present other options and bring them to the table in those situations that key onto the personalized nature of fundraising at this level.
May I ask a question real quick? Does that also sort of highlight the need for a team and having more than just one person involved with a donor relationship?
Yeah. You hit it on the head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things a breakthrough for me in my career and knowing how to do this better than I was before was it's really not about what they do, it's what the impact of what they do and the gift will make.
Yeah.
And once you see the impact of the gift, it becomes a much different discussion as opposed to just, I gave a gift.
Mm-hmm.
You changed the student's life, you did whatever you did. And I think once we get to that point, it's good. Another question that's come in is, how do you gauge who is the right person in the department to begin with to reach out to in regards to collecting data or needs? Do we always target the dean, the program lead, the college administrator?
So, the dean is always the person who should be consulted when you're setting priorities for the unit. Depending on what stage your university or your school is in, they may have preferences on setting a small number of priorities, because like Jen said before, we can't possibly fundraise for everybody's priority. And that's something that David Perlmutter has actually talked about as a former dean. They would see that he's traveling and then he raises a big gift and he comes back, and rather than congratulating him, they're saying, why haven't you raised money for my project or my department or things like that? So starting at the highest level, yes, your dean needs to set the priorities. But like I said before, depending on where you're at, for example, if you're going to be going into a campaign, you want to engage everybody within your school or unit to determine what are those needs and getting those documented, because during the course of a campaign, which may be many, many years, you may accomplish some of the top priorities, but you're always going to be coming across new donors who may have other interests. And so having having a list of other priorities and the data to back them up is a good thing, but always go through your dean to set those. This would be my recommendation.
Agree with that. Jen, any comments, any thoughts?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. In
Pretty
any
important.
campaign I've been involved in, it actually starts at the presidential level and works its way down.
Yes.
And people, sometimes you win, you get into priorities, and sometimes you don't.
That's
depending on what the donor base looks like and all kinds of other factors.
Yep.
From one question I have finally is how do you frame the story the best way? So I always think about it as a story. It's not an ask. It's more than an ask. It's a process, but eventually comes down to you telling a great story. How do you hone that so the people who are going to benefit from the gift know we're doing the best we can do to help that?
So I have, in my consulting practice, I have a wonderful communications partner, and she always says, make them cry. Tell stories that, and maybe it's not a literal recommendation, but the stories that you convey that make an emotional connection are the most powerful, because we all get so much information every day from so many different vehicles. You need to stand out. And so the most important aspect to me from storytelling is make it human and try to get an emotional reaction out of somebody, whether it's, whether they cry or they just feel an enormous sense of pride, or they see, they're able to see what their gift has actually accomplished, and they know that other people are now potentially going to be inspired by that. Just try to strike some sort of an emotional reaction whenever you're thinking about your storytelling, in whatever format it is, your written format, digital. If your dean is speaking to a group, that's a storytelling. We have endless storytelling opportunities, but we really fail miserably at making a connection on an emotional level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I find that true for the fundraiser as well. So many times in my own career, after having a successful ask, I sometimes just sat at my desk and went, I was really part of something special when this played out. So there's kind of two stories being worked on at the same time.
Exactly.
I would just add to that, Aaron and I have taught a course for the fundraising school called The Art of Fundraising. And in that course, and thanks to Aaron, we have a structure. What is the narrative arc of a story, and how do you tell a story, and how do you recognize a good story? And when you look at them, you see this arc that is the classic storytelling arc. And so in that class, we ask people to practice. You take a story of something that happened in your organization and make it a story using this arc. And so we practice that in the course. And you could do the same thing with academics, and turning the work of philanthropy, a story of philanthropy, or a story of their research, or a story of a student or the classroom, to practice it using this model. And so I think, we can practice and refine that. Some people are great at it naturally, or like, how do they do that? But actually, a lot of those people have practiced that.
Yes.
and develop that as a skill. And so I think we can do that. And that's another thing we can do with our teams.
Thank you. Liz, back to you.
Thank you, Bill and Aaron and Jen. This has been a really, I've taken so many notes. I've learned so much today. I'm grateful. Actually, you did a little bit of providing your purpose in life and in giving your great gifts away. But thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. As we approach the conclusion of our conversation, I just want to do a quick recap. We've delved into the heart of philanthropy, education, and the power intersection of the two. Philanthropy, yeah, I get choked up about philanthropy. It's the heart of human greatness. It really is. And the wisdom that they've shared with us today really does remind us that when we find our meaning in life, we have an opportunity to give it away, to really elevate the quality of life and standard of living on the planet through the work that we're doing in higher education, in schools, and arts organizations, and conservation organizations. And it is a deep reminder that we are all philanthropists in our own right, with our unique gifts to offer for the greater good. Aaron and Jen have illuminated the path toward bridging the gap between academia and our academic leaders and philanthropy, emphasizing the pursuit of knowledge and the act of giving can and should go hand in hand with the act of education. Their work, and you'll have an opportunity. We have a little QR code we're going to pop up on the screen if you're interested in their book, Fundraising Principles for Faculty and Academic Leaders. It will take you right there. It's a beacon guiding us towards a more harmonious partnership between educators, fundraisers, and institutions. We hope that our conversation today has sparked new insights, inspired collaboration, and encouraged a deeper understanding of the vital role of faculty and academic leaders, and what we all play in the world of philanthropy. As we strive to advance the mission of our organizations and the betterment of society, let us carry forward with the lessons learned today to create a brighter future for our institutions, communities, and the world at large. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of the profound connection between knowledge and giving. We look forward to continuing this important dialogue and encourage you to explore the transformative power of philanthropy in higher education. Stay connected, stay curious, and most importantly, continue to give of your true gifts. So on behalf of Skystone Partners, our distinguished guests, Genevieve Shaker and Aaron Conley, and the entire team behind this webcast, we express our gratitude for your presence here today, our attendees, and may your philanthropic journey be filled with purpose and impact. I hope you'll enjoy us for the next On Giving next month, Tuesday, November 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Look out for the invitation. In the meantime, we'll be sending out a replay of the conversation along with some conversation notes for you all to reference in the future if you would like. Again, thank you all so very much. Aaron, you're on day 2 in Cairo. Thank you, jet lag and all. You've made it.
I hope I made sense.
You were amazing. Genevieve, maybe you're not quite so far, just over there in Indianapolis, but I'm so grateful for your thoughtful research, contributions, and conversation today. Bill, thank you for the great questions, and guests. Go forth, do good work. Philanthropy is a powerful force for good. Take care.